I'm the only one smiling, Piers. Do an investigation. Figure out what's classified and what's not. Joe Biden, we know that he had classified information next to his Corvette.
Are you able to recognize
that was
the issue right in
improperly
front of us
stored?
instead of talking about
Answer
previous
me
Democratic
the
precedents?
question.
I mean, it's bullshit.
Yeah, am I just here to look
Anna,
pretty? I'd like to
I'm
weigh
going to
in
come
on
to
this
Anna.
a little bit. It is okay to call a spade, even if it's your own preferred party engaging in the bad behavior. But that's the problem, Piers. We have nothing but hacks in the media in America now, because you don't care about the country. You care about whatever political figure you're doing propaganda for. It is pathetic.
When you enter the country illegally, you are a criminal by definition. So deporting a criminal alien is the right thing to do by your definition, Brian.
Benny is just flailing because he can't accept reality right now.
Donald Trump is going to do that. He's transactional to not do what's right for the United States, but to do what's right for Israel.
You're like my schizophrenic aunt, Thanksgiving dinner after a box of wine.
Democracy, DOGE and deportations. Three divisive Ds have dominated debate in the breathless opening months of President Trump's presidency. All of them in some way related. Elon Musk's role in cost-cutting DOGE has divided opinion and the courts. A wave of protests against Tesla has sparked questions about the line between crime and free speech. And so has Musk's decision to sue over being smeared as a Nazi. The deportation of alleged Venezuelan criminals was slammed as one of many apparent attacks on constitutional democracy. The attempted deportation of allegedly Hamas-loving students was slammed as an attack on the First Amendment. And somewhere in between it all, Trump's approval record is at a record high, while the Democrats are in disarray. So, a lot of Ds there. Fortunately, we have an A-list panel to debate them from the political right, the left and the centre. I'm joined by Benny Johnson from The Benny Show, executive producer and host of the Young Turks, Ana Kasparian, and the host of No Lie with Tyler-Cohen. Tyler-Cohen, welcome to all of you. OK, before we get into the Ds...
I'm the only one smiling, Piers. This is going to be a very bad D panel. Very small D energy on this panel.
Well, before we get to Ds, why don't we start...
I still didn't laugh.
Well, before we start with Ds, let's start with S for signal, OK? Now, Benny, I want to stare at you down the barrel of this camera, and I want you to try... I want you to try and imagine for a moment you're a Democrat. OK?
Okay.
Can you do that?
All right. That's right. Okay, I can feel the self-loathing. All right.
You're a Democrat. And you heard about this story. You're outraged, right?
Sure.
Why are you outraged?
Well, because obviously it's so malevolent, evil, and dangerous for American politicians who have classified information to store them, and all of that classified information illegally on private servers inside of a water closet being run totally offline by a bunch of goons that I've hired in order to keep my secrets secure. Also, when the Trump administration found out about this, they destroyed those servers, right? They smashed them, they got rid of them, they bleach bitted them, and that's how they treated our classified information. Oh my God, that was Hillary. I'm so sorry, Piers. I know this is a professional show. I apologize. Let's see. How am I going to do the cognitive dissonance when I voted for Hillary Clinton and then I allowed Joe Biden to be president while being totally mentally incapacitated and somehow say that the president's administration is reckless with classified information, which it wasn't classified. No names, no targets, no locations.
How could it not be?
This is all a big hoax. The hoax.
Benny, I admire the rigorous whataboutery. I give you a little bit round of applause for the quality of the whataboutery. But how can you say...
I live for your applause.
I would say, how can you say with a straight face, but you are laughing quite maniacally, so I won't bother. But how can you say with a maniacally laughing face that it was not classified information? Because I can't... Honestly, I've been wrestling with this since this story broke. I come from a lot of military in my family. How could specifics about an imminent attack 2 hours before it's about to happen on foreign soil involving American armed forces, detailing times, detailing the type of aircraft, the type of weaponry, who the targets were. The group chat was named after the targets, right? How could that not constitute classified information? If that isn't classified information, given the time sensitivity of it and the information in those chats, what is?
Well, hold up. Wait a second, Piers. You're not in charge of what's classified and what's not. There's an entire system for that. And
you said it wasn't classified information.
That system was literally on a live
Ridiculous.
panel. Curiously, that system was on a live panel before the Senate. Secretary of the Secretary of Intelligence is going to be Tulsi Gabbard, right? DNI. She's going to be the one who states classification, and she said that there was no classified material in that chat.
So just to be clear, you don't think...
I don't know why it was so hard for me to come up with DNI. My apologies.
That's okay. Probably because you're in DNI denial.
There's another D. There's another D. You got me, Piers.
It's DNI for denial. Self-denial is what you're in, Benny.
Okay, let me put this to rest. If you think I'm going to sit here and state that it was somehow wise or smart for an individual to add Jeffrey Goldberg, somebody who's pushed and pumped every single Trump hoax, including but not limited to getting us into the Afghanistan, Iraq wars, hoaxes about the 51 intel experts, the suckers and losers hoax. If you think that I'm going to sit here and defend that and say that that was wise to do that, or that these conversations should have been had on Signal, I don't think they should have been, to be quite honest with you. I'm not going to defend that, right?
Fair enough.
What I am going to do is say that there's people in. I don't think that was smart. It's like, in what universe would it be wise to add the guy who ran the suckers and losers hoax to your group chat for Trump?
Right.
It's
so in what universe?
smart.
So my response would be, and it would be a question you would
It's not
ask.
wise, right?
Well, yeah, but my response to that would be, and I'll bring in the other panel members very shortly. My response to that would be, if it was the other way round, and this was under the Biden administration, you wouldn't just be saying it was unwise or a mistake.
You mean?
You would say. Hang on.
Yeah.
I haven't asked you a question. You would say, hang on a second. The National Security Advisor for the United States of America added a journalist that hates Trump and the administration to a highly classified, probably illegal, because they're not supposed to do that on Signal, conversation about an imminent attack on foreign soil involving American military. You would demand
you keep saying
that.
it's illegal.
Hang on. Here's the
That's
question.
not up to you, pal.
Here's the question.
It's not up to you.
Here's
There's
my
a
question.
classification
Here's my
process.
question for you. You would have said that National Security Advisor should be fired, wouldn't you?
Well, hold on. So Mike Waltz has gone on TV and he's been in front of a ton of reporters saying that he doesn't know this guy and he doesn't have his contact information. He's never met him. And President Trump last night said that it was one of his staffers.
So the National
who was that?
Security.
Exactly.
To be clear.
I don't know.
Hang on.
Right?
Hang on.
The story is not cut and dry.
Waltz himself said on Laura Ingraham it wasn't one of the staffers, it was him. Right? So he added this person and then said, you know what may have happened here? I just think the guy's name and number were the wrong way. It wasn't the right person to the right number. This guy's the National Security Advisor for the United States of America. He doesn't even know how to make his contacts list on his phone secure.
So
should he be fired?
Again,
yes or no? Before I bring the others in.
That's not up to me, man. That's up to President Trump, and he says no. So President Trump says no. He's not my employee. Okay. And also, there's so much going. There's so many other things going on.
I'm going
to
come to other things.
Technical glitch. All right. Says they're bringing in Elon Musk.
We're going to bring that stuff in.
We're going to
get to the D's.
Hoaxes, and the fact that they had a lawsuit ready to go, like the day afterwards, and it leaked the day before the Senate panel, and then that lawsuit gets given to Judge Boasberg. I don't know, man. How many coincidences do you believe in, Piers? Is this like some Christmas miracle for Democrats that need one right now? I don't know.
American homeowners are at risk of a growing real estate scam, which the FBI calls house stealing. This is how it works. Criminals forge your signature on just one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and then file it with your local recorder's office. Just like that, your home title is transferred out of your name. Scammers can then take out loans using your equity as collateral or even sell the property behind your back. You won't even know it's happening until you start getting collection or foreclosure notices. When was the last time you checked your home title? I own a home in the United States, and the answer for me is never until now. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep your home and equity safe. Here's what you get: immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and if fraud does happen, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim and get access to your personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code PEERS, or just click on the link in the description. Make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code PEERS, P-I-E-R-S, to get the protection and peace of mind that you deserve. Let me bring in Brian, because you've been waiting with unusual patience, Brian. So it's a massive conspiracy theory, and he was deliberately added to this group for some nefarious reason. Is the new theory from Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all just, I mean, it's bullshit. Like Benny is just flailing because he can't accept reality right now, and he knows full well that if the tables were turned, he would be going on a scorched earth tirade about how all of these people should resign or worse, be prosecuted or criminally. I mean, like, what are we even doing here? Are you that much of a partisan hack that you can't just acknowledge? The problem is this administration is so incapable of taking the L that they would rather just entrench and prolong these problems even more.
Which I think is I think that's a good point, because Trump, that comes from Trump. Trump is on, Trump's told me, you never ever admit you lose at anything. You just barrel down.
It's the Roy Cohn School of it's the Roy Cohn School of Management. Yeah. It's that these guys they're so focused on ego, so focused on protecting their own asses, that instead of just being able to take the L, which, by the way, people would respect a hell of a lot more than Pete Hegseth coming out and saying, I did not discuss any war plans, only for Jeffrey Goldberg to release the very next day a detailed account of exactly the war plans that he was releasing.
Yeah. I mean, look. I know Pete. I like Pete.
Even the Atlantic has changed their words.
Yeah, but
changed their story here.
The
Atlantic says, "Oh, now it's an attack. It's an attack plan. It's not a war plan."
Well, what would you call this? What would you call this?
All of this hinges on what's classified.
Benny, I'm going to bring Anna in here because she's not had a chance to speak yet.
Piers, am I just here to look pretty? I'd like to.
I'm going to come to Anna. I'm going to read you first of all.
Listen.
I'm going to read you one of the things that Pete Hegseth says was not a war plan. Weather is favourable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch, 2:15. Strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. If that's not a bloody war plan, what is? What is?
I'm not going.
Anna.
I'm not going to defend adding Jeffrey
Anna,
Goldberg to this chat. I'm not defending that.
I'm asking Anna.
But you did, Benny. The first thing you did was engage in whataboutism.
It's a war plan.
That's the first thing you did in an effort to provide cover for this obvious, massive, colossal mistake and error that was made by members of the Trump cabinet. Let's just keep it 100. Look, Brian is correct in calling out the hackery that is going on in the media right now. Depending on which party, the member of the media is supportive of, they're going to provide cover for bad behavior, but immediately change tune when it's a member of their own party or preferred party engaging in the same activity. Fact of the matter is, what Hillary Clinton did with her email server was wrong. We condemned it at TYT. I continue to condemn it today. The massive error that was made by Trump administration officials, not just by the inclusion of Jeffrey Goldberg in that group text, but the fact that they were using Signal to communicate, which is not a secure way of communicating about classified information. Whatever plans they have, whatever strikes they intend to do in other countries, they should not be using the Signal app to be doing that. It is okay to call a spade, even if it's your own preferred party engaging in the bad behavior. But that's the problem, Piers. We have nothing but hacks in the media in America now, where you're so obsessed with your own precious little tribe that you put your entire country on the back burner because you don't care about the country. You care about whatever political figure you're doing propaganda for. It is pathetic. Okay, look at our economy right now. Consumer sentiment down the drain. Okay, Federal Reserve is not lowering interest rates further because of the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty in our economy that's going to negatively impact households. Inflation continues to be sticky. We have so many serious issues to deal with, and we're never going to come up with a damn solution because we have have two sides that are covered by two, hack groups of media figures who provide cover for failed solutions to very real problems in this country. That's the real issue here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not interested in the whataboutism. I'm not interested in pretending as though Democrats are perfect or Republicans are perfect. What happened with Jeffrey Goldberg was a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they just take responsibility for it, we'll all move on. But that's the other thing. No one ever takes responsibility.
I totally
Trump
agree.
said it was a mistake.
I totally
Trump
agree.
said it was a mistake. Trump said it was a mistake. I've said it was a mistake. Many people on the many people in the chattosphere
Benny,
has
you
said
started
this.
off.
Benny,
you couldn't even bring
you
yourself
started
to
off
not
with
do
Hillary
whataboutism.
Clinton.
No
What are you going to bring up
adding
from
Jeffrey
decades ago? You're going to bring up
Goldberg
other stuff.
There's no defending adding Jeffrey Goldberg. The entire argument that everyone on this panel is making, I'm perfectly happy to fight all of you, is that they shared classified information. The administration says, no, you're not the arbiters of that. That would be what the entire case hinges on. That would be what all of the controversy hinges on. And so you're going to have to specify the classified information.
Why don't you just do it out in public? It's not classified.
We know that
just do it on
Biden,
X. Let's all read
we
the
know that Joe
exchange
Biden
as
had
it's
classified
happening in real
information.
time.
Okay,
It's not
Benny,
classified.
according to
It's
the
not
report,
classified.
Time out. As I said,
had classified information
Benny,
in his garage next to his Corvette. Hillary Clinton had classified information. That's what was determined
I get
by
it.
an investigation.
I just cannot think of anything that could be more highly classified than to actually be discussing war plans for an imminent attack on foreign soil involving American military. To me, it's indisputably highly classified. Otherwise, what else is?
Especially in front of a journalist that hates you. Especially in front of a journalist that hates you. I hope that they find the person that added Jeffrey Goldberg and then that they fire him.
It was Mike Waltz.
I just think I can't imagine a stupider. I can't imagine a worse thing to do. I'm not going to defend that.
Okay.
Everyone knows that.
All right.
It's a mistake. That's a terrible mistake.
But we know who it was. But Brian, let me bring in Brian. We know from the screen grab. It says added by Mike Waltz. And by the way, Mike Waltz clarified last night on Laura Ingraham it wasn't a staffer. Brian, your final word on this, then we're going to change topic.
Look, again, I just want to dig into one misnomer that Benny is putting forward, this idea that it wasn't classified and so it's okay. This is some clever little trick that Republicans and Trump are trying to do. Trump is the ultimate classification authority. So he thinks that if he can just come forward and say, well, I'm declassifying it, then that will absolve everybody in retrospect. But they know full well that this kind of material, when you are talking about an imminent attack prior to it happening, notwithstanding the fact that Jeffrey Goldberg was there, notwithstanding the fact that it's on an unsecured app, but of course, by nature, this stuff is classified. And again, if Benny didn't have his head so far up the Republican Party's ass, he would be able to recognize that if somebody with a D next to their name was doing the exact same thing.
Well, to be fair to Benny,
I'm not really.
To be fair to Benny, he said it was a big mistake. He said that there should be accountability. He's not tried to shirk away from that. He simply questioned whether we are the right arbiters for what is classified information. It's a reasonable point. The question will be, will there be a proper investigation to get to the bottom of it? I think it's indisputable. But
let me try something. Piers, please let me respond to that. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. So, Brian, you're not in charge of what's classified and what's not. Now, I'm perfectly happy to let all that play out. Fine. Do an investigation. Figure out what's classified and what's not. We know that Hillary Clinton had classified information on a private server and that she destroyed it. We know that. That's confirmed.
You're not
by the people who are
even
responsible
capable
for
of not talking about Hillary Clinton, are you?
Okay, fine. Let's fast forward. Joe Biden. We know that he had classified information next to his Corvette.
Are you able to recognize the issue right in front of us instead of talking about previous Democratic presidents?
Answer me the question. Is it wrong? Is it wrong for Hillary and Joe to do it?
Is it wrong for them to be reckless with classified information? Absolutely.
There we go.
It's not that hard.
Okay.
It's not that hard to take accountability for when somebody fucks up on your own side.
Okay, should something have happened to them? Yeah, and I'm saying that it was. I'm saying that I'm waiting for the classification to figure out what was.
Well, something did happen. Something did happen to both of them.
People who are responsible for that are saying that this wasn't.
Well, something did happen to both of them. They both lost elections.
And Signal.
Well, hang on. They both
Signal
lost
is
elections.
an app.
They both lost elections to Donald Trump soon after they were embroiled in classified information issues. Anyway, let's change tack. Anna, let's talk about the first 3 months nearly of Trump's second term. It's been very Trumpian, very sort of chaotic on one level. Other people see method to the madness. I'm kind of one of them. I think there have been some clear wins. What's happened on the border is borderline, for want of a better phrase, miraculous. You know, the volume of people pouring over the southern border illegally has been stemmed almost to nothing, which is an incredible achievement. Would you agree with that before we go into other issues? I don't always pick the healthiest food options, and I'm sure you don't either. We're all human and we're all busy. That's why doctors created Field of Greens. One delicious glass of Field of Greens is like nutritional armour for your body. Each fruit and vegetable in this drink was selected by a doctor for specific health benefit. There's a heart health group, lungs and kidney groups, metabolism. It's all very complicated, but not with Field of Greens because it's all in there. It gives me energy, but it also gives me the confidence that I can be traveling or, shock horror, enjoying a sneaky burger, and I'll still be getting all the nutrition my body needs daily. Only Field of Greens makes you the better health promise. Your doctor will notice your improved health, or you'll get your money back. We've teamed up to give you a 20% discount on your first order. Just use promo code PIERS at brickhousenutrition.com/PIERS. That's code PIERS at brickhousenutrition.com/PIERS.
Well, I certainly think his actions, some of which, by the way, were massive mistakes, including the deportation of legal immigrants. But I think those actions and the rhetoric coming from the administration, of course, is going to discourage people from attempting to cross the border.
Would you accept his words?
The lower volume of... I mean, that has certainly worked, yes.
Right.
And look, what's mirrored by your comments is what you see in the polling. You know, the one area in which Trump continues to do quite well is the area in immigration. So I think the American people overall have been giving him pretty high grades on immigration, despite the fact, you know, I personally have had a few issues with innocent people, including, again, American citizens getting rounded up in this mess. But you know,
do you object to the principle?
From previously still remains that, you know, the Biden administration's failures on the border created a groundswell of support for Trump or Trumpian immigration policies. And I think Democrats need to take responsibility for that, to be quite frank. Because there wouldn't be that groundswell of support if it weren't for the mistakes made by the Biden administration.
No, I completely agree. I mean, Brian, it is inarguable, surely, that they have brought the southern border crisis, which is what it was, under control. This issue of what should be done with illegal immigrants who are criminals is, again, hugely popular with the American people to deport them. And my question would be, I'm not an American, but I have a home there. I've been coming to America for a long time. If I was to break the law as a non-American, I'd be straight on a plane out of there with my visa revoked, right? I mean, it's not difficult. Why should the same logic not apply to illegal immigrants who are criminals?
If they are criminals, then they should be. Look, I'm not here to defend somebody who's done something wrong, who wants the privilege of being in the country. If they've done something, if they've committed criminal activity, then of course I'm for that as well. My issue, which Anna alluded to, is the fact that folks who are not criminals are getting swept up because we've completely abdicated the whole concept of due process in all of this. And so I think that that's still important. I think that, look, it used to be a Republican refrain that we're a country of laws, and so we can't just suspend them when it's inconvenient for us to do so.
That's a good point, Benny, isn't it? I mean, you must be concerned about due process here too. You don't want to have a kind of anarchical setup where anyone can get thrown out without any due process, or do you?
Hold on, wait a second. What do you define as criminal?
Well, no, we know already. There are some people. For example, there are some members of this so-called Venezuelan.
Some laws that have been on the books.
Well, there are certain people
of years.
Well, the point I would make about say the Venezuelan gang,
ratified quite recently. When you enter the country illegally, you are a criminal by definition. That's why we call it illegal immigration. You've broken our laws by remaining here without an official invitation. Doing this the proper way, you are a criminal. Therefore, all illegal aliens are criminals by definition. So deporting a criminal alien is the right thing to do by your definition, Brian, because they're criminals. Yes?
May I jump in on that point? So, Benny, I get what you're saying, that if you're in the country illegally, then the United States has the right to deport you. I understand where you're coming from on that. However, I would just ask to maybe consider the limited resources we have in regard to our response to this issue. So I would argue that it is more important to focus on criminal elements who are actually causing other crimes within the borders of the United States and are here illegally, because we don't have enough detention space. We don't have enough tax resources. We don't have enough judges to adjudicate whether or not the individual who's been accused of engaging in that criminal behavior actually did so. The courts still have a role in our system of checks and balances, and they do need to weigh in and adjudicate whether or not someone should be deported. That's an important part of due process. And I get that people are under the assumption that due process doesn't matter for people who are undocumented, but you would be mistaken in taking that ideology on, because that ends up deteriorating the rights of American citizens. We must protect due process at any and all costs, because if we don't, it'll come back to us in a very negative way. But, I support the Trump administration's efforts in deporting criminals who are engaging in violent crimes in the United States. But I do think it's also important to ensure we're implementing due process so we're not wrongly accusing people of doing things they have not done and then deporting them based on those accusations alone.
Yeah.
That's too much government power concentrated into one branch of our federal government.
We have been, Brian, there was at least one case reported this week of one so-called member of this vile Venezuelan gang where they were identified.
Trende Aragua, I think.
And there's one guy who's a sort of, who looks like the least likely member of a Venezuelan gang ever, who's this sort of gay, quite artistic bloke who seems to have been rounded up here. It seems on the face of it to be a complete miscarriage of any kind of justice without any due process. It's those kind of stories which I think are concerning people about the due process.
100%. And it was all because he committed the crime of having a tattoo. I mean, the reality is that if we're in a situation where even one of these people was one single person who should not be there gets sent off, that is a massive fuck up yet again in an administration that's shown that it's perfectly willing to commit them over and over and over again. But look, this is what, so that none of us, so that Ana doesn't get rounded up, so that I don't get rounded up, so that Benny doesn't get rounded up. We cannot be in a situation.
Are you a legal American citizen?
We cannot be in a situation where we're just allowing people to get deported because they have tattoos on their arms. This is why due process is important.
This is really important.
Benny?
Piers, this is really because he just brought in something that is berserker mode. This is bizarre world. So are you asserting that the administration is deporting Americans, naturalized American citizens, or native-born American citizens? Is that what you're asserting?
I'm asserting that they are deporting people
who
are not criminal aliens.
It was a mistake.
Are you? So you're saying that Ana is here, and Ana, I totally agree with your last point, by the way. And I need to take an aside here. Ana's done incredible reporting on some of the horrific crimes that have been allowed to happen in this country. Some of them by criminal aliens, some of them by American citizens that don't get prosecuted. And so we cover that on my program. I just want to say thank you for doing that, because it's an awful society. It's a zero trust society when you let criminals out of jail to do heinous crimes.
Elon Musk stroke DOGE. There's a lot to unpack here, because they are finding a lot of evidence of waste. They are finding a lot of evidence of abuse and so on. But they're also firing a lot of people. And Musk is now being targeted with companies like Tesla, with people, who used to support him vociferously, now turning on him and burning Teslas and so on and so on. So I guess my two questions would be, is DOGE washing its face? Is it proving its point enough to justify it? And how long do you think Elon Musk is going to put up with the damage to his existing businesses if they carry on being as pretty devastating as they've been with Tesla? Do you think there's a chance he walks away from this?
I don't know if Elon Musk is even tempted to walk away from what he's doing. It seems like he gets a lot of enjoyment out of triggering people who are upset at the potential of losing certain entitlements that they have paid into their entire lives. The Social Security Administration is really suffering right now, and we're talking about the entitlement program that working Americans paid into their entire working lives. And now recipients of Social Security are unable to get a live person to talk to if they haven't received their Social Security check. 7,000 people were fired, and 10 field offices for the Social Security Administration were shut down as a result of DOGE's actions. And I see this as a roundabout way of dismantling an incredibly popular, wildly popular government program that Republican voters absolutely love without having to even pass a single piece of legislation. So this is the Trump administration's way of dismantling it without having to deal with Congress. This has been considered the third rail of politics because of how popular Social Security is. If they either privatize it, shut it down, or essentially take away these entitlement benefits from Americans who paid into the system, there will be hell to pay for the Republican Party, not just the Trump administration, likely for decades to come. They're really playing with fire on that issue. We'll see what happens. But the final thing I'll say is I condemn anyone who engages in any violence, including burning, firebombing Teslas, attacking people simply because they drive Teslas. People who do that are absolute scum, and they're counterproductive to the peaceful protesters who have been, protesting outside of Tesla dealerships or whatever. They have every right to do that. And those people are not the same as the scummy individuals who are causing real violent acts and damage to, these dealerships.
Okay, before I come to you, Brian, Benny, on Elon Musk, he's doing this for nothing. He doesn't need to do it. He clearly enjoys it. He's sort of reveling in it to a degree. But purely from a optics point of view, if you were him, are you going to keep at this or are you going to walk?
Well, I don't know Elon Musk, but you are pretty clear in what you can see is his thinking, because he says it every single day on X. He sort of lays out why he's doing this. He sees this as saving the American economy, which of course he is intricately connected to, and his companies would not exist without. And so he views the righting of the ship and the solving of waste, fraud, and abuse as saving the future of American economy. You cannot run a household $37 trillion in debt. You cannot run a business $37 trillion in debt. You could not run your own pocketbook if you were going down to the 7-Eleven to get a Zyn. You wouldn't be able to buy that if you were $37 trillion in debt. None of it works if you don't solve the fraud, waste, and abuse. And so that's what Elon Musk is doing. And I think it makes a ton of business sense, actually.
But when Anna talks about her concern about what happens to the Republicans if they come after Social Security, which is hugely popular, as she said, with Republicans, are you concerned about that?
Well, as far as I know, the only people who've been taken off of Social Security are the 300-year-olds who've been getting Social Security since the 1700s.
Okay. Brian?
No, Benny. They fired 7,000 people. So now people are unable to get in contact with anyone at the Social Security Administration if they haven't received the Social Security check that they're entitled to. We're talking about our nation's elderly, okay? It is so important that we protect these people. And again, they paid into the system and now they're being screwed over. It's just wrong.
There is a theme.
And it's
there is a theme, Brian, I would say, developing here about this administration. It's very fast, it's very furious, it's very big thinking, it's very bold. But if you look at all these things, whether it's DOGE, whether it's the border and people slipping through the net, there are people slipping through the net all over the place, perhaps because of the speed that they're moving. Did what happened with the signal thing, was that because they're all just moving too fast and trying to be and not really giving enough time to really think things through? That would be my observation. If I was talking to Trump now, I'd be saying, maybe just slow the horses down a little bit to make sure that as you roll out these very, very big things, you're not letting Americans who don't deserve it slip through the net, either being deported wrongly, losing Social Security wrongly, being fired wrongly, etc.
Well, look, I would say the easy analysis of this is to say that they're incompetent. And I do think that they're incompetent to a degree. But I also think that in large part, this is what they want to do.
Elon Musk isn't incompetent, is he? I mean, let's be clear. He's one of the most brilliant minds in America.
Which brings me to my second point, is in large part, this is what they want to do. I mean, they'll trot out their talking points, and Benny brought out one of these things that, they're looking to just get the debt under control. they're adding money to the deficit, which is going to explode the debt even further. And so like this notion that we're just getting our spending under control, they needed to try to cut a little bit so that they can, including Medicaid and food stamps, $880 billion in energy and commerce, which will cut Medicaid, $230 billion in the Agriculture Committee, which will cut food stamps, to try and offset just a fraction of what they're going to add by virtue of $4.5 trillion for a tax cut that's overwhelmingly going to favor millionaires and billionaires. So we can say that they're incompetent for some of the egregious things that they're doing, but in large part, they're doing exactly what they want to do. They're not focused on the debt. They're not focused on trying to help people or make sure that they have adequate health care or grow, add jobs or whatever it is. They are doing what they need to do for the people that they're looking to help. And that is overwhelmingly people who are exactly like Elon Musk. And by the way, Piers, I would take issue with how you framed Elon, because he's not doing this as some benevolent patriotic figure.
Well, he's not being paid.
He was under investigation by nearly every single agency that he and Donald Trump have gutted, whether through gutting the agency itself or firing the inspectors general. Department of Labor, NLRB, USAID, CFPB, EPA. And so this isn't some indication of like benevolence by this patriotic figure.
Hang on.
He's deriving
being investigated or even sued. That's perfectly reasonable, normal business practice. It's whether those investigations or lawsuits lead to anything being actively overturned or then being punished for it. Trump is already on the record as saying, look, I will accept the ruling of judges on these things if we get challenged, but I'm not going to be blasted off my mission statement I made as a candidate. Many people would say, and I think there's merit to this, Trump is doing exactly what he said he'd do. And you might quibble whether they're going to reduce the debt or not. You can't tell after 10 weeks whether an administration can reduce the debt. You can after 2 years, and if they haven't reduced the debt after 2 years, then they're going to get a shellacking in the midterms and probably get a shellacking in the next general election. But I do think trying to assess whether what they're doing at the moment can reduce the debt is a bit preposterous after only, 10 weeks?
Well, it's not preposterous if you have the CBO score that shows exactly how much is going to be added to the debt. And so again, if you're passing it, I mean, it's just math, right? If you're cutting programs that don't amount to as much as you're adding by virtue of these tax cuts, then you are going to add to the deficit, and that's going to balloon the debt, which is to say nothing, by the way, of the amount of federal revenues that are shrinking by virtue of the fact that the economy is doing poorly right now.
Well, it is, except I would say, Benny, if I'm Donald Trump, that his own approval rating has never been higher as a president.
No.
I mean, it's never been higher. So
the Democrat Party's approval rating has never been lower.
The Democrats are at record lows, right? So Americans do not want to hear a word from the Democrats. They're done with them. They're done with the woke stuff. And they're actually pretty broadly supportive of Trump, which is, I mean, if you're Trump, you're probably saying, I hear all the squealing. I don't care. I've got a mandate. I won everything in the election, and I'm going to deliver exactly what I said I'd do. And it might take him a bit of time, but I'm a little bit more patient about this. I think I do see methods of the madness. I do see the border being sorted. I do see an attack on government waste as being very popular with the American people, and so on. So I just think it's too early to say this is all not going to work. Demonstrably, some of it is working and is popular with the public.
Here we go. The tracker right here, $130 billion in savings. That's $1,000 in savings per American household. Right there. That's what Brian says is adding to our deficit, which is
that the same tracker where they noted that $8 billion were cut when it was actually $8 million were cut? That the same tracker that they started taking credit for cuts that were made during the Biden administration? Just wanted to check if it's the same exact tracker that we're talking about here.
Brian's stance here is that we should raise taxes. And I want him to carry that
My
forward.
stance is that we should raise taxes. All I'm pointing out is that the tracker
higher taxes. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Brian. I want you to run for DNC chair. Okay, maybe you could take Harry Siston's job, all right, as the #1 DNC influencer, since he's getting canceled right now. You could take Harry's job. You could work with David Hogg, and you can run on higher taxes for American And you can say that $37 trillion in debt is okie dokie to me. That's what you can do. And you can burn a Tesla dealership down while you're at it.
If you think debt
bring
is
that message
bad,
to the American people. I want you to do it.
If you think
I
debt is
want you to
bad,
do it. How do I make it happen?
If you think debt is bad, how do you answer for the fact that we are adding debt that based on the CBO score, we're adding debt, and your deity, Donald Trump, added $7.8 trillion to the debt during his first term? Where are these fiscally conservative Republicans?
Yeah, I don't want anyone to add anything to the debt. The vast majority of that came during COVID. We all know what a bizarro time that was. And I don't think that anyone's trying to defend that. Donald Trump has proven time and time again, he wants to cut government spending and cut efficiency, cut government spending, add efficiency, and cut our deficit. The deficit is a killer. You
but he's never
cannot
done
run
that.
a household
but
or a business when you are in debt. When you're spending $4, you take in $1, you spend $4. That's what the country is doing right now.
He's never done it.
He's
never done it. You keep saying that he wants to do things that he's never done.
It's like amazing. He's been in office for 2 months.
Well, he didn't have 4 years. Hang on, Brian.
Well, hold on.
Brian, he didn't have 4 years. He had 3 years and a pandemic.
The highest revenues.
It would have been interesting what would have happened.
The highest revenues.
Without the pandemic, Trump's economic record in the first term would have been a lot better. I've always said Trump would have won that election.
And without 9/11,
exactly
George
true.
W. Bush's
okay, so
events
knock off your agenda very quickly if you're not careful. And I want to bring you in on another part of all this. Again, the D's, deportations, but a slight variant, which is student deportations. We've seen this big row, obviously, recently about the Columbia University student who was alleged to be pro-Hamas. It seems to be a bit of a foggy picture as to whether he was or not. But this principle of deporting students for their political allegiances or views, where do you sit on that? Bernie Sanders says this is not democracy. You can't exile political dissidents, not in the United States.
Well, I mean, our government will certainly try to do that as long as the government of Israel demands it. And our government, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans, is completely controlled by the Israeli government, and they're going to do the Israeli government's bidding. That's what this is really about. That's all it is. So protesters who are legal residents, permanent residents who have green cards, will be deported simply for exercising their freedom of speech and criticizing how the Israeli government is prosecuting this war in Gaza, slaughtering tens of thousands of innocent women, children, elderly people, civilians. They're going to continue the slaughter. They don't want any backlash from anyone in the United States about it, including American citizens, including permanent residents. And remember, Miriam Adelson and the Adelson family overall gave Donald Trump hundreds of millions of dollars to not do what's right for the United States, but to do what's right for Israel. So Donald Trump is going to do that. He's transactional. Money talks for him, and he doesn't care. He'll go ahead and revoke green cards and deport valedictorians, students who have been in this country since they were 7 years old, were valedictorians in high school. But God forbid they ever ding or criticize the Israeli government, because that's when they'll become a target.
What if they actively support Hamas?
Look, I despise Hamas, and it disgusts me that anyone would say anything positive about Hamas. But our freedom of speech indicates that we are allowed to even be supportive of the KKK, be supportive of Nazis, be supportive of terrorist
But that
groups.
applies to American naturalized citizens. If you've come in on a green card, right? If you say on your green card you support a organization that is a prescribed terror group in the United States, you don't get your green card. That is the argument Marco Rubio made. I thought it was quite a good one. I mean, I haven't got a green card, but I have a visa. And they're very stringent about all these kind of things, right? If you aligned
Visas
yourself
and green cards
with a terror
Piers,
group,
you know that.
If you aligned yourself with a terror group, you wouldn't get in. So why should you stay in?
Well,
is my point.
visa and a green card is hold on, Piers, hold on. Visa and green card is different, as you know.
Course, yeah.
Someone who's a permanent legal resident is, it's like one tiny step lower than a naturalized citizen. And the point is, whatever allegation the Trump administration is making against these green card holders, it needs to be adjudicated by a judge. Again, it goes back to the issue of due process. If you guys are comfortable with an executive branch official, simply one person unilaterally deciding without any due process that someone has done something wrong and now their green card should be revoked, I think that's setting a really, really bad and dangerous precedent. Again, that concentrates too much power among a very small group of people, and I think people deserve due process. Have a judge weigh in and determine whether or not this person is actually a threat to the United States or our national security, and then make that decision. But
Benny,
for some reason, they don't want to do that.
All right, Benny, you know, Trump has banned the AP from the White House, refusing to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He's kicking out student protesters for having views he doesn't like. He wants CNN to be banned from the airwaves and so on. A lot of people saying, hang on, aren't you supposed to be Mr. Free Speech, Mr. President? Aren't you and Elon Musk the standard bearers of free speech? What happened to free speech? Is it only free speech when you like what you're hearing?
I love the way that you ask these questions, Piers. You're like my schizophrenic aunt. It's like Thanksgiving dinner after a box of wine. Because in 1 second, you're like, Anna, this scum should have been deported as a member of Hamas. This scum said that they need to be out. And he said the end of Western civilization is what they're here for, which, in fact, they did. And then in the same question, you're like, Trump's just deporting students because he doesn't like what they say. Right. You can't have it both ways, Piers. Is this guy a supporter of a terrorist group?
As somebody asking the questions, I can ask you all difficult questions phrased in different ways. The one thing you just said that really offended me, I would never drink wine out of a box, ever, ever.
Well, that's how we know Piers didn't go to... Piers, you must not have gone to college in America.
No, I did not. That, for me, crosses a massive red line. I'm a bottle man. Anyway, but Benny,
Brian and Benny are going to team up and gang up on Piers. Do we have
Benny? I think the most
ambitious
one thing you'll ever
event in American history.
The one thing you'll get buy-in from me on is that I will defend Franzia wine till my dying day.
Then you're going to lose me immediately. But Benny, back to slightly less serious matters, free speech.
Respect.
But on this issue of free speech, has the Trump administration been consistent? We might find this student, Mahmoud Khalil's views loathsome. There's no apparent, so far, hard evidence he has been pro-Hamas, and he disputes that. If it turns out he's not been actively pro-Hamas and we can't find actual words coming out of his mouth to show that, is it right that a green card holder in America should be thrown out of the country?
Listen, you know, I'm not an expert on this case. I'm not a green card expert either. So I'm just going to go very quickly to the simple example of you're a guest here, all right? And if you go to another country, and Americans go and travel abroad to tons of countries, every country on earth right now has an American traveling abroad. If that American decided to support a terrorist faction or behave in a way that was criminal and illegal, right, which is what was happening when you were barricading and burning down and harming students and threatening students, then expect to be kicked out of that country. It's pretty logical, right? And I don't think that free speech has anything to do with it. And as you stated, free speech applies to American citizens, either native born or naturalized. That the Constitution applies to us, not to guests here. So it's the same thing as the criminal alien argument.
All right.
You don't get the same rights if you are a guest here, especially if you came here illegally, right?
Although, funny enough, I did discover when Alex Jones tried to have me deported for my views on gun control, I did discover that First Amendment rights apply to me, even though I'm not a citizen, if I'm in America. And so Barack Obama saved me for the gleeful American nation by saying I was entitled under my First Amendment rights, even though I'm not a citizen, to be critical of the Second Amendment. And so I was allowed to stay. So
I thought you were allowed to stay.
I did get exactly the same rights to free speech that you did in your country. And I was very grateful, by the way. Brian.
I thought you were allowed to stay because you played the Pigeon Lady in Home Alone 2, and it's a classic.
Right.
Benny's wrong. The Supreme Court has ruled that guests here are entitled to rights under our Constitution while they're here as well. And look, the truth is that if we are, if we are actually abiding by this idea,
attacking students, right, and like attacking universities and barricading yourself. I mean, that's not a right under the Constitution. I'm saying that
the guy
physically attacking or verbally.
I'm saying it's bad behavior if you're a guest in a country. That's all I'm saying. You know, I am a massive free speech proponent, I'm not going to sit here and say, you should be kicked out because of your speech. I'm talking about
but you kind of
a
are.
series of criminal behavior.
Yeah, you kind of are,
I'm talking about
Come on, you are.
Series of...
You're saying if you're a guest in the United States and you say something we don't like, we're going to throw you out.
Man, I didn't want to get caught in this because I do not know. I will tell you straight out. There's a lot of people that are experts in the, what's his name?
Mahmoud Khalil.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that are experts in everything he's ever done. I'm not one of them. All right. So and there's a lot of so I'm not one of them. So I'm not really going to argue like for or against this guy, to be honest with you.
No, but you're saying if a guest behaves badly, you
I'm
should
saying
be allowed
in generalities,
you should be allowed to throw them out. And as Brian rightly points
these
out,
riots,
you are kind of saying if you don't like what he says, you can kick him out.
The riots at the schools were criminal. The barricading of the schools, the
that's
threatening of
different.
students, the threatening of teachers,
That's different.
the smashing of the doors. Like, this is criminal behavior.
If you break the
and
law,
if you're a guest here,
if you break the law, hang on. If you're a guest,
saying.
if you're a guest in America and you break the law, absolutely that's grounds for deportation. There is no evidence that Mahmoud Khalil has broken the law, which is a pretty significant part of this. He's just been targeted, and Marco Rubio hasn't even tried to use that argument. All he said is, if he had said on his green card application that he supported Hamas, he wouldn't have been allowed in. But then it comes to, is there any actual evidence he has openly supported Hamas? There doesn't so far seem to be any. Brian?
That's for investigators, man. I'm not the expert on this guy.
I think you put it perfectly. The reality is that you cannot both claim that you are a free speech absolutist while claiming that if somebody says something that doesn't comport with your political ideology, that they should just be kicked out of the country. This is the hypocrisy being put on full display. There's really no other way to cut it. Even if you are diametrically opposed to what he advocates for, if you are in favor of our First Amendment, if you are a free speech absolutist, there's one way to show it. And what this administration is doing is showing that they're not. They only want people who are going to echo or mirror political ideology that comports with their own views.
Okay, I want to end by asking all of you to sum up Trump's first 10 or so weeks back in the White House with 3 words. So, Benny, I'll start with you. 3 words to summarize it.
Yep, here we go. You ready?
Yep.
I've been thinking about this for a while, all right? So glad you asked. Deport Piers Morgan.
Well, Alex Jones tried. He failed. It was deemed that I was too essential to the well-being of Americans and had to be kept. No, but to be serious, how would you summarize it? Give me 3 words to summarize how you think Trump has done so far.
Golden era energy.
Okay. Anna?
I'm so tired. That's the way to describe it.
It is exhausting. I mean, for anyone in the media business, it is relentless and exhausting. It's great for business. We can all pretend it isn't, but it is fantastic for business. If we had Kamala Harris running the United States, I wouldn't have a show by now. So it is incredibly good for everyone in our game. But my God, it is exhausting. Brian, 3 words.
You would have been deported under Kamala.
I would. Brian.
Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim. What do you mean by that?
I mean that he's not thinking through what he's doing. He would rather just fire before he actually aims, and we're seeing things get broken as a result. Okay. It's going to be I think it's going to be fascinating to see where this all looks in like a year's time. I do detect method to the madness. I might be completely deluded, but we shall see. But either way, a great panel. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Piers.
You get deported for hating on boxes of wine from Kamala.
You know what? I would actually have you. I would have your citizenship. I would throw you out of the United States for drinking wine out of a box, personally. I would. I would view that as an egregious abuse of your citizenship, and I would have you thrown out. You certainly wouldn't get into the United Kingdom if we caught you drinking wine out of a box. Particularly if it was American wine.
Not trying to get into the UK. You guys got your own problems.
If you come to this country, mate, you better have a bottle of something French and red and expensive. Then I'll talk to you. Then I'll let you in. Guys, thank you all very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.